So here's another one. Kyle, what's the difference between average rate of return versus actual rate of return? This one is so powerful that I'm going to have to switch over my computer. But before I do that, I want to give you a concept before we go to the numbers. So here's the concept. Average rate of return versus actual rate of return. Is it possible to get a nice average rate of return, a nice, high average rate of return, and make no money? Let's see. Now remember, this is just a concept. So I'm going to use big numbers to drive home the concept. Then we're going to go look at actuals over the past 15 years, 16 years in the market, okay? So here we go. Let's say your investment advisor or somebody calls you on the phone and they have an investment for your consideration and they say it averages 25%. Now most people, when I ask this question to them, they say yes. So probably nodding your head, okay, Kyle, I'm all in, let's go. So let's say you start the investment with $100,000. So year one, we put 100K in. The investment guy calls you back on the phone and he says, we had a great year. We had 100% rate of return. Right, I told you it's a concept, isn't it? Right, so they get 100% rate of return, right? Which means at the end of the year, you have $200,000. So that means the next year, you're going to start with $200,000 in the account. Then he calls you up and he says, we've had a really bad year. And he says, well, what do you mean? Well, we've lost 50%. So you lose 50%. So how much do you have? You have $100,000. So now let's think about what we were taught in school about how to calculate an average. 100 minus 50 is 50. Divide it by 2 equals a 25% average rate of return. He didn't lie to you. They did it. But let's go over to the money. Right? This side's math. This side's money. Money-wise, you started out with $100,000. You ended with $100,000. What was your actual return on investment? Zero. You made no money. So, to the answer to the question, if it ever becomes a trivia question for you, is it possible to average a nice rate of return and make no money? The answer is yes. So let's switch over to my computer screen here, and I'm going to prove it to you with looking at some actual numbers and rates of return in the market over a certain period of time.
All right, guys, so we just went through, we're back at my computer screen here, and we just went through an example, a very conceptual example with some really large numbers just to drive home the concept of average versus actual. Okay, or what I like to say, there's the math rate of return, and then there's the money rate of return. So the money rate of return is going to be what we call our actual rate of return, and our math rate of return is going to be our average rate of return. So I wanted to bring you back over here to the computer screen so that you guys, I could take some time to really share with you some historicals and validate that conceptualized example about math and money, okay? So what I did here was I went ahead and selected the S&P 500 total return. I selected a time frame from 1999 to 2013. I wanted to use something that was fairly relevant. And on the side here, on the right-hand side, you see actual returns from 1999, and we're using the concept of a dollar. What would that dollar have done over that period of time? So there you go. Now, if we come over here, we see the market statistics here. Number of years selected, 15, 1999 to 2013 is a 15-year time frame. The average rate of return, or again, the math rate of return over that period, was 6.58%. The actual rate of return, or what I like to call the money rate of return over that period, is 4.66. My first question is, why are these two different rates of return over the same period of time? Why are they different? Why is the average higher than the actual? What's going on there? Well, if you're like most of my clients, you're probably thinking, well, we've got taxes, we have fees involved. Sure, but these are gross rates of return, gross rates of return. So let's pull taxes out of that. Let's pull fees out of that. What's really going on? market loss. That's why the actual rate of return over that period is lower. So your money rate of return of that period is lower than your math rate of return, which is your average, which is 6.58. So your math rate of return is 6.58, but because of market losses, or what one of my clients said to me recently is, what actually happened over that period of time is there was some loss. So your actual rate of return is going to be lower than your average rate of return. So that's one way to think about it. And again, if we go back to our conceptualized example, where we're talking about math versus money, and we're talking about that average of 25%, is it possible to average 25% and make no money? Absolutely. Because in that example where it was very polarized, we had a 25% average rate of return with a 0 actual rate of return over the same period of time. So again, no pressure, no obligation. If you'd like to have a conversation about what's your money return versus your math return, I'm here to help. Talk to you soon.